Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, good to see you this afternoon. Thank you for your testimony this morning in appropriations. And for the benefit of Chairman Menendez, I thank the Secretary for the implementation of the Foreign Service Families Act that we passed a couple years ago. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for your help in getting that through the United States Congress. We also discussed the meeting that took place that was just portrayed in this photograph between Putin and Xi. And Mr. Secretary, you underscored what I think is an imperative, that we be prepared, fully prepared, if China provides material military support to Russia, to work in concert with our allies to immediately impose very tough economic sanctions. And I know work's being done to make sure we're ready to do that. I understand the issue of the Critical Minerals Security Partnership was raised here, so I won't go over that. I do want to follow through on a couple issues that were raised at this morning's hearing. One by my colleague, Senator Schatz, on the issue of press freedom. Because I appreciate very much the State Department Human Rights Report, and I appreciate the fact that it is insulated, I think, to the extent possible and pretty well from political forces. I know what a challenge that is. I do want to just raise concerns about crackdown on freedom of the press in two countries where I hope we will continue to have strong relations with. One is a country I've spent a lot of time in, a member of the Quad, and that's India. If you look at recent reports, there's a significant crackdown on press freedom in India. It is the world's largest democracy, but this is very, very troubling. The other is neighboring Pakistan, which at times has had a very vibrant press, but right now we're seeing a critical crackdown, and I just want to point out that the State Department Human Rights Report, which was just released Monday, indicates that both India and Pakistan have seen increasing threats on press freedom. Both countries are increasingly dangerous places for journalists trying to do their jobs. And the State Department's not alone in this. Other organizations that are out there to protect freedom of the press have indicated both these countries have serious problems. Reporters Without Borders ranks India 150 out of 180, and Pakistan 157 out of 180. So I'm not going to go into great detail today, but I am interested in following up with you and your team on those issues. I do want to pick up on our earlier conversation today about some concerning actions taken by the government of Israel as we work to try to create a period of time where we can de-escalate. And this morning, you agreed that the recent action taken by the Knesset, really just yesterday, that rolled back the agreement made more than 20 years ago by Israel to evacuate 4 settlements, was inconsistent with the obligations that the government of Israel has taken on in Aqaba and Sharm el-Sheikh. And I think we need to press those issues on both sides whenever we see violations of this agreement. I do want to talk about certain elements of the new government, which are really extreme forces within this government. One of them is Ben-Gvir. The other is Smotrich. Ben-Gvir is and these are not backbenchers. They're not backbenchers. They have very important responsibilities within this new government. Ben-Gvir is the Minister of National Security in charge of statewide law enforcement and the Israeli police. Smotrich is the Minister of Finance and also, as you know, minister in the Defense Ministry that has authority over civilian issues in the West Bank, including illegal construction and authority over planning and construction for settlements. Just a few days ago, Smotrich commented as follows, that there is no such thing as Palestinians because there is no such thing as a Palestinian people. This was condemned by Biden administration officials, and Mr. Secretary, you're here today. Do you join in condemning that comment?
I do.
And this is not the first time, right, that Smotrich has made these very incendiary comments, incitements to violence. It was just a few weeks ago where he stated in reference to the Palestinian village of Hawara that it needs to be, quote, wiped out, unquote, and that, quote, the state of Israel should do it, unquote. Now, I agree with President Biden as a longtime supporter of the U.S.-Israel relationship that it's been built on interests and built on values. You have to agree, Mr. Secretary, that those comments by Smotrich, Minister of Finance, and somebody who has an important portfolio over the West Bank, those do not reflect our values, do they?
They do not, and I would also point out that the second comment you alluded to on Hawara, Prime Minister Netanyahu insisted that the person in question walk those comments back, which he did,
right,
for what that's worth. I'd also note that the legislation you referred to, which again we think is indeed inconsistent with commitments made, and in fact inconsistent with long-standing commitments, because those were commitments undertaken, I believe, during the Bush administration.
Yeah.
My understanding is that Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that they have no intention of actually, the government, this was a Knesset law, has no intention of actually moving forward on the authorities that it's been apparently given.
So, Mr. Secretary, all of this raises the issue that Prime Minister Netanyahu says he has two hands on the steering wheel, meaning that he's in control of this government. But we're looking at actions his ministers are taking and actions in portfolios that are very significant that go directly contrary to that. And Prime Minister Netanyahu, as we discussed this morning, specifically himself disavowed the agreement reached in Aqaba within 24 hours of it having been reached. So I just go back to make my final point I did this morning, which is I appreciate the statements that have been made by Biden administration officials. I think, Mr. Secretary, it's important for you personally also to continue to speak out. And I think we look weak when we see time after time actions taken inconsistent with our positions with no consequence at all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.